Okay, well, good morning. This is a 2004 Ford Explorer, and the issue with this one is this is the high pressure line right here coming out of the uh, compressor, and it was leaking down at one of the connectors where the hose was crimped onto the aluminum line and just puking out all its oil, just spitting it out. And what would happen if you're, the do-it-yourselfer at home, you think, oh, well, my AC has lost some pressure, da 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 da. Go to Walmart, get one of those cans, you recharge your system. Hey, your AC works again. But you got to understand that oil has to stay in the system. So with the oil being spit out, pretty soon your compressor is going to run dry and your compressor is going to lock up. So you can get your AC up and running again by using one of those cans to recharge your system, but you need to find out where the leak is, and especially if you're losing a massive amounts of oil out of your compressor, that oil has to stay in your system. It stays in the system, it rotates around with the refrigerant, not say rotates, but flows around with the refrigerant and keeps everything lubricated in the compressor. And if that's not happening, then your compressor is going to lock up. And so anyhow, this line here, try to point to it, this line here is what was leaking. This line here, there's nothing wrong with it. And then this is the problem. Now, it's been a while since I've worked with a dealership, and when you work for a dealership, you go to your different schools and you find out all the tricks of the trade of how things are designed to be worked on. But this manifold block, and it's sold as the manifold line, is all one piece. So the smaller line is the pressure coming out, and the larger line is the return going back to the compressor. So the smaller line that you see right down here is your high side, and that's the part that was leaking the oil is right here. And you can see where the oil has been sprayed out because it's all filthy because it's picking up dirt as you go. It's actually spraying out of here and spraying all over the engine and everything else. So this piece is your return line, and as you see the way the return line is set up, this snakes around the front of the engine, up the other side to the passenger side, goes into the receiver dryer accumulator, and you'll see that right here. This is the hookup for this line, which is the return to the compressor. So this has ended up being about a 6-hour job because I think you really needed to take the shroud, the fan, and a whole bunch of other crap off to get this thing out of the car and the new one put in. The compressor had to come off, the belt has to come off, and you have to crawl under there and unbolt the connectors. And now if you're doing it at a shop on a lift, it's a lot easier because you can set your lift at midpoint and be able to work on it. But when you're flat stalling it or doing it in your garage, it leaves a couple challenges. And one of the ways to get to the compressor, and as you can see the covering is still off, I have to replace that, is the bolts for the compressor. You have to go through here. So you have to jack up the truck enough so you have clearance to get to the bolts to remove the compressor so you can get the line out and the new line in. And so the solution to all of this is to cut it. Use your tubing cutter and cut it. Now, remove the pressure first, obviously. I mean, I'm hopefully not talking to the totally stupid people here, but cut the line. This line is just slightly larger than 1/2 inch outside diameter. Let me get out of the shade here. Get in the sunlight a little bit. So what you need is a 1/2 inch butt connector compression fitting. Most of your hardware stores have that fitting, and if you go to Napa, AutoZone, O'Reilly, some of the other auto places, Checkers, whatever you have in your area, they should have the steel compression. Now you'll probably be okay with the brass, but this line here, when the system is running, carries anywhere from 150 to 225 psi, pounds per square inch. So that's why I'd recommend getting the steel compression fitting. If you do the compression fitting properly, you won't have any leakage, and you won't have to deal with removing this one. In the case on this vehicle, this line was fine, but because this line is part of the manifold block attached to this line, which was bad, the whole thing had to come off. And not that I'm unfamiliar with working on vehicles and all the different ways things are put together, but this is the first Ford Explorer with the 40 V6 with this compressor, this system that I had done, and so it took about 6 hours. Had I had just cut it, remove this line, put the new line on, splice it in with this piece here, which is what I would have had left. This is aluminum line, so there's not going to be a problem there. And had I just spliced it in, I would have had this whole thing done probably in about a half an hour instead of 6 hours or whatever it ended up being. And you know, it is what it is. Some of the things that, the way things are put together, you just have to be smarter than the box. And this was a live and learn, and so I just want to put this video out here that if you have this issue, or maybe on your car you have this issue, might be a solution to look at, or take it to the shop and have them do it. This line replacement, honestly, is not a do-it-yourself or do-it-at-home type of replacement. There's too many things that can go wrong with the seals, the tubes, getting dirt in the system, everything else that can go wrong with the way this is designed to go together. And there's no way around that. If you feel confident in doing that, that'd be my suggestion. Cut that line, either have it flared and put it back together that way, or just use a compression fitting, which is what I would do, and be done with it. Vacuum the system. Make sure that you vacuum it. Hold vacuum. You shut your valves on your gauge set. Hold vacuum. Make sure it's holding vacuum for at least a good hour, maybe 2 hours, and make sure you don't have any leakage. Then charge it, run the system, test it, etc., etc. That's exactly what I did. I vacuumed out the system. I evacuated the system. It held vacuum. I let it sit for 2 hours, and I ended up doing spark plugs and wires on it. So I did that while I was holding. Then I charged the system, and then with my thermometer in the vents, I was pushing 50 degrees coming out of the vents, and everything's fine now. But it took 6 hours to put this line set on, and yeah, should have been an easier way, but there wasn't, and now it's done, and that's it.